Good afternoon and welcome to BTV News in Context, sir.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, we want to just get into this conversation to just understand deeper, further what it means, what climate change means for us in the SADC region. What is happening in terms of climate change, sir?
Yes, thank you. Climate change impacts mainly on the agricultural sector,
yes,
and also on the water sector. So agricultural sector, it affects the soil moisture deficit, which means it indirectly affects plants. It will also affect plants directly, just like when there's a heat stress on plants, and plants are wilt or they are simply burnt out by the intense heat. And in terms of water, obviously, water sources that we have, especially in some countries like Botswana, if I just give an example, we've got Dam, those dams, this impart surface water, and they depend heavily on the inflow of the rivers. So during drought, there's no inflow. So water levels in our dams, they decline. The water level in the Zambezi is declining. And now they're to switch off the Keabile hydropower plant. And that translates to power, limited power supply. And because of that, you get load shedding. So those are some. Of course, it also impacts on other things like the health sector as well, either directly or indirectly. You see, it affects on ecosystems. The river has been dry for the past 2 years or so, and people who are making a livelihood out of that river, like the boat cruises and what have you, well, everything is gone. So livelihoods are also affected directly. And even access to natural resources, which are found in our ecosystems. Panic, this illness and nothing. So many resources that we get in the world. And those are affected by climate change as well.
Definitely. Yeah, in this time they are experiencing rotary kutola manokonoko phetogo ya loapi and go ngomola pelo tota rotera ikutola whether o motho eleng gore o nna ko morakeng bontsi ja dinako le wena o kgona go bona gore go ha gompieno le uba le thasetse le keketse dikgomore o kgona go bona go kopana le tonki ke se se thata tota mme o kgona go kopana le one e wa poe le gore ya nong go mogote thata. And ga ke tse gore from your side, what does the SADC region, or what is the SADC region doing so far, the humanitarian appeal side of things? What can be done so far from that aspect?
So, as you recall, this month SADC launched a humanitarian appeal, and the whole idea was to try to address issues which are related to the climate change-induced disasters. Drought, for example, which is one of them, including floods. As you know, this year we had El Nino, and because of that, we had a deficient in rainfall in most of the countries in the SADC region, and some of the countries in the SADC region, like Zambia, Zimbabwe, Namibia, they actually declared a state of emergency. So, which means, I think, against this backdrop, SADC they didn't meet. And then they committed about $5.5 billion towards addressing the impacts of droughts and flash floods, which are increasingly becoming quite a problem in this part of the region. Remember that Southern Africa, particularly Botswana, is a hotspot when it comes to global warming. So the impacts are being felt in SADC. And probably also more into Botswana because the impacts in Botswana are going to be much higher. Yes. So that's why they didn't meet. And then, of course, they're trying to see how best they can try to help vulnerable people who are exposed to climate change. Yeah.
Maybe we can get into those factors that contributed to Botswana being, more like the hotspot. Or what are those contributing factors that make Botswana to be so vulnerable among the SADC countries? Is it because it is a landlocked country? Why this part of Africa, the SADC region, is mostly being cautioned so much on this climatic change?
Yes, one reason is, like we mentioned, is that it's landlocked. So because landlocked, so which means it's far from the oceans, so it doesn't benefit from the effects of the ocean. That's one. Secondly, also, Botswana, as you all know, is dependent heavily on climate-sensitive livelihoods, like agriculture, for example. Agriculture, Botswana, they are based on agriculture. And you know that agriculture is really climate-sensitive, unlike mining, for example. Mining, diamonds are there, whether there's drought, it's raining. But for agriculture, it depends on rainfall. That's one. And also the other thing, of course, is our limited adaptive capacity. How are we able to take ourselves out of what we go through as a result of climate change? So that also is a problem to us.
Yes.
So, but also, like I said, the geography of Botswana itself is not is not the best. So that's why Botswana is tend to be becoming hotter and hotter, and that's likely to increase in the future. So all these impacts are going to be amplified in the future. Yeah.
Well, speaking of amplified effects in the future, and you also mentioned us taking ourselves out of this, how do neighboring countries, or how can neighboring countries actually support each other? Also making reference to what President Lorenzo said also, as these neighboring countries that are at a higher risk of this climate change.
I think the starting point is that you need to realize that most of the SADC region, especially Botswana, South Africa, Lesotho, Mozambique, Namibia, they are more or less affected by the same weather systems, and which means, although there's a variation in climate, but generally the drivers of the climate are more or less the same. So which means the disasters that are related to climate change in any one country are also experienced in another country. So what to do now is simple to have, harmonize all those mitigation policies, adaptation policies. For example, where these transboundary river basins, those rivers have got water, and we need that water. Namibia needs that water. Angola needs that water. So what can you do to show that there's equity in terms of the distribution of that water? How do you manage the resource? So that's the starting point. Let's optimally exploit these transboundary water sources, and that's one. Secondly, we also need to, like I said, to harmonize these adaptation and mitigation plans, and also make sure that we collaborate in sharing climate information. So which means we need to really have a database on climate information services which can be accessed by each country, because by sharing that, we're in a position to see which best policies, which best practices can benefit everyone within the region, and not to work in silos. And also, where possible, those countries which have got resources, I think you have to find a way of ensuring that we distribute them across the region. Where there's food, where there's surplus, why can't it go amongst all these countries when they need distribution, so that nobody's left behind when it comes to, for example, addressing issues are food security. So those are some of the most important that we need to deal with. And even strengthen all these issues which exist, which deal with climate change. And even more importantly, making sure that they mainstream the climate change into development planning. In other words, they should not see drought as an emergency. Some of those countries declared a state of emergency because of drought. Drought is not an emergency. Drought is something that we live with it. We know, and we can predict that this is going to be a drought year. We know last year was a drought year. We know that starting from July, August, we're going to La Nina. So, but of course, La Nina does not mean that there will be rainfall. We can still experience below normal rainfall. But you need to be prepared for that. So even when you design infrastructure, Let's do climate proofing. Let's make sure, and even the region, make sure that we can do it. Let's make sure that every infrastructure, whether there are bridges, everything, they should be able to stand a certain threshold of flooding. That should also apply. And all those standards, they should be shared across the entire region.
Yes.
And that way, that is going to help us to build resilience. And lastly, of course, adaptive capacity. Let's make sure that people have the capacity. Let's try to share the technologies, empower people so that they're able to stand those things. And the media also should also be involved, should also be a partner in informing vulnerable communities on how to adapt to climate change and how to mitigate climate change. So all these things, they need to be there, and we need to share them. And lastly, probably maybe for the entire region, we need to have maybe a program. It could be maybe like a program across all universities and everywhere, which are focused on climate change, which also informs policy on climate change. How do you deal with this? And then update people regularly. How should your agriculture, how should you practice agriculture which is resilient, which is sustainable under this climate change scenario? Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Tlhalerwa, you are also speaking. You are speaking about we shouldn't be surprised about things that we can be well prepared for. Maybe and you spoke also on information sharing and also mentioned something on media. Then I like for us to get into that. Of recently, we've been speaking a lot about involving the media practice into disseminating information on climate change. Maybe we can get into that and how more the media can be involved in this to make sure we deliver information, we caution people out there, and we deliver the accurate information as well.
Yes. Let me start by saying that the media is in touch with grassroots. I can say that. You, the media people, you interact more with people out there, the communities, even those who are vulnerable. So it's more like you work together with them. So that also makes it easy for you maybe to share knowledge with them, inform them about what's happening. We academics, yes, our interaction with communities to some extent is limited. But you, because some of you, the news anchors, you go out there, you meet the people, be the leaders, be the pioneers, be the patriots when it comes to issues of climate change, and also work harder, and also, even maybe just have in printed media, maybe just a full page dedicated to issues of climate change. And you may even also work with extension officers, for example. You can go out there, maybe meet the farmers, the demonstrators, and just together. When they sell these ideas, this new programs which have come out, and so forth. When they're there in the quota meetings, they also be there. And also if they've learned something about, I know that in most cases they do not talk much about climate change, how to adapt. You all talk people about how to plow, to get money for this and that. But you don't tell them that, but because of this kind of climate, this is how you should do things with your team. Be there also maybe and put that information before them. They should also get to know. So you really need to do more visible. I want to leave all these commemorations about climate change, about our Earth Hour, like in Kamachi. There are so many events at climate change which are being commemorated every year. Be part of them.
Yes.
Be pioneers. Very soon, I think I'll be knocking on your offices to do that. Last week, I think I was happy that BTV, at climate change and how South Africa is going to be in the future. They were there, and I'm happy that this was even aired in the news, and even various media platforms it was shared. That's what I expect for it going forward.
Yes,
Yeah.
Definitely. I would say maybe 20 years back, there was still news on global warming, there was still news on climate change, but at that time, because the wake-up call is not yet there, but now it's there. We are rising up to see and we actually need to take action. How can we further use artificial intelligence? We just spoke on media. Now, speaking of artificial intelligence, how movies, for example, you would see that climate change has been something that we've been talking about. There's been some information that has been relayed one way or the other through even movies, through filmmaking. But what way can we further keep on using artificial intelligence, or that we are using artificial intelligence today? And also it could be a means of quick communication to say, I'm experiencing this right now. There are floods right now where I am and I can't get out of where I am and actually get quick assistance. How are we using artificial intelligence, and what is the future for artificial intelligence with regards to addressing climate change issues?
Well, there are a lot of prospects for the future.
Yes.
For the future. Because currently, as we speak now, I would say that maybe, especially from an academic point of view, students are getting learned. We're going to know that there's climate change, there's this and this. There are even some organizations now who are dealing with climate change. And I tell you, they're very creative in the way they do things, involving the youth, involving everyone, involving all the stakeholders. Stakeholder engagement is quite there. Maybe what you could probably do is maybe to make it even more attractive so that it can motivate those who are lying back, for example. Make it very interesting. Try to identify what people like most about. And they try to take them now, put them into a space where they'll be able to express themselves about climate change, where they can even be able to initiate projects which address climate change, or anything to that effect, and allow them also to partake in physical activities that demonstrate that indeed climate is changing. It could be projects, it could be in the agricultural sector, it could be in the health sector, it could be in the water sector, it could be whatever sector. So those are very, very important. They should be able to transform their livelihoods through green initiatives, so-called green initiatives, apply green technology, apply conservation agriculture, for example, and even use renewable energy when need be, because together we can move forward. So all that is possible, I would say. The prospects are there.
Now, we earlier mentioned some things on relief efforts that are being offered. What more can we mention with regards to organizations like OCHA and FAO? What are they doing with regards to offering assistance on such issues related to climate change? And going forward, they will actually help us.
Yeah. Let me say that this appeal which is made by SADC, which they've been talking about, if you look at OCHA and FAO, those are complementing agencies. They complement what they're doing. And remember that FAO is more focused on agricultural production. So they're trying to promote climate-smart agricultural practices, sustainable agriculture. What they're actually doing is to building capacity, and the target, of course, is both the vulnerable and those who want to emerge into full farmers who are engaged into sustainable agricultural production. That's where FAO is, including doing research, of course, on smart agriculture initiatives. And then OCHA, of course, that one, remember that is more to do with addressing the impacts, mobilizing funds maybe to cater for those who have been affected by disasters. It could be floods, it could be anything else. So the roles, they complement each other, although they're a bit different. As you can see that one is actually addressing, adapting to the impacts, dealing with the impacts. The other one is more to do with, it's a bit more predictive. The other one is more reactive. So, but they complement each other. And when they complement each other, of course, it means that now they work with the SADC. SADC, remember that it's regional. And those organizations we talk about, they are more or less international organizations. They're all arms of the United Nations. So which means now you have here two bodies, basically. United Nations with its FAO, with its OCHA, then it's working with SADC.
SADC.
Yes, so they work together. And when they work together in that way, obviously there'll be chances that there'll be technical transfer from either OCHA or FAO, and that's going to feed into SADC. SADC may still need them maybe for guidance in terms of technical advances which are already available to adapt to climate change or to mitigate climate change. And all of this, they can then provide them those. So in a way, they work together. That's why they've even contributed to that. Remember that OCHA has contributed $66 million, I think.
Wow.
And the FAO 10 million. And all that money, it will go into not only loss and damage, but it also be used, of course, into trying to identify building capacity amongst people. Because the whole idea is to avoid even that loss and damage. So I said that they complement each other.
Yes.
In a nutshell.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, in the last minute, moving a bit away from the relief programs now, from your side in the last minute, if you would just give a few recommendations or strategies that we can, employ as Botswana or even as neighboring countries, as the SADC region, what would you recommend as the main ways that we really need to walk into to make sure we are helping ourselves with regards to climate change?
Yeah. I think one way to do is that let's be climate smart, to start with. Let's try to involve ourselves in socio-economic activities which are sustainable under a changing climate. Let's all know that climate change is almost going beyond the limits. We've already reached the 1.5 degrees Celsius for the Paris Agreement. Now that's supposed to be 2030 or middle of the century, but now it's already here. So what you need to do now, all of us, let's try to make sure that we engage in activities or practices which will make us resilient to climate change. That's the message I'm saying. Yeah. Let's do all that it can to ensure that we engage in sustainable livelihoods.
Definitely. Well, Mr. Tlhalerwa, I wish we had more time. I would have asked you more questions because this is really a topic of interest that we as the general population, the global population, we really need to dig deeper into. I wanted to ask you questions, maybe difficult questions to ask, like, really, what's the future going to be like in 100 years? Because climate change is something that's going to keep on being there, or global warming is going to keep on warming up. However, we're given more time, we will come and have a better discussion on this. Thank you so much. Of
course, I have good answers to that, but I can't tell you. Let's wait for that right time.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Right, that is climate expert rather from the University of Botswana, Mr. Keabile Tlhalerwa. But so are change re se ama di hela re change di kakanyo maikuto le boitshwaro are be re kopane gape moragonyana. Thank you for staying with us. Medikgwebo tse di potana le tse di gagare mono gae go kaiwa di dira masome herang bongwe mo kgwebong mme ebile di tsentse letsogo mo go gwetheng mebereko mme seo go kaiwa ha dikgwebo mono gae di tshwanetse go thusiwa mo kgaolong mo kgolong ya tsone ka jana di ka thusa gore itsholelo ya lehatshe